Can everyone see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Perfection. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Fi, for that introduction. And so, as Fi has mentioned, I am the founder of Granted, but formerly the program coordinator at the Black Founders Network, which is where I initially met Fiza and served the community alongside Ifosa and everyone else at BFN of over 5,000 entrepreneurs. And in addition to that, I'm also the founder and executive director of Okwera Academy. So you might see me wearing multiple hats. Or you might have seen me in the streets of social media and LinkedIn with different titles. It's because I wear those multiple hats. But for the context of today's conversation, I am the founder and CEO of Granted, and I'll talk a little bit later about how Granted came to be. But our objective and the whole purpose of Granted is, as the name suggests, to help founders and entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders like yourselves get grants and non-diluted funding for your ventures and your projects. I have personally raised over $2 million in grants in multiple projects and ventures from like the MasterCard Foundation, the City of Toronto, U of T, University of Toronto, the Government of Canada, to name but a few, and a constant complaint around how challenging it is to find grants, how fragmented the process is, etc. When I was running my nonprofit, Okwera Academy, which is where we support Black folks breaking into different career paths, I was pursuing grants quite a lot, and it just became so overwhelming to do that, especially with such a lean team. Most times as a one-woman show, to pursue the grants took me over 20 hours per week. That took me away from running the programs that delivered the impact that we needed. So that's how Granted came to be. And so that is a little bit of a background of myself, just to give you context of where I'm coming from with the knowledge and the expertise I'm going to be sharing today. And I'll just go through a mini presentation, and I invite you to be interactive as I share it. Faiza and a couple of my colleagues, Florian and Ayomide from the Granted team, will be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to interact as I present, and then I'll do a demo of Granted. I did see, I think it was Jennifer who mentioned in the chat that you're excited to see how to leverage AI in your grant seeking process. Really looking forward to showing you what that process looks like through Granted, and then we'll have an interactive Q&A session towards the end. So let's get started. I always start my presentation with a big number to wow us all. $37 billion. That is how much money is available in grants. For the context of this conversation, it's going to be very focused on the Canadian grant ecosystem, but this information is universal and applicable to multiple ecosystems. But in Canada, there's $37 billion that's available to founders, to nonprofits, to for-profit businesses, to researchers, to artists every year. This is a lot of money. If you just got like 1% of this funding, that is still a lot of money for your venture. But this money is often left on the table because of how broken and fragmented the grant seeking process is. Like I've mentioned, I've talked to a lot of founders, served over 5,000 founders, and I don't need to even emphasize this problem, because if you're on this call, I imagine you relate to it. I imagine this is a problem that brought you here, that grant seeking and just writing grants in general is overly manual, because you're having to track with databases or expend so much money paying expensive consultants. It's time consuming and it's fragmented. The process is complex, right? I mentioned for me, myself, having to spend over 20 hours per week on grant related activities. And I'm curious to hear, as I share this, if you've written grants before, how much time has it taken you to write one grant, or how many hours on average per week are you spending on searching and finding grants? I'll be curious to hear that. So just drop a number in the chat. But another piece of feedback that I'm hearing from founders like yourselves all the time is that it is so impossible to understand the funder priorities or decode language. I was chatting with a founder last weekend. He was like, I see the opportunities, but I'm not quite understanding what the funder is looking for. It's so hard to decode their language so I can align my project and my application to them. So this is just some of the few problems that I've encountered and that you might relate to. And the cost of this inaction, it's one thing to have the problem, but what does the problem actually cost you even, right? Like I mentioned, a lot of the founders are spending over 20 to even 40 hours per week. That's a whole full-time job on grant-related activities, which if you're very early on and if you're running lean, you do not have that luxury. You have to be working on your business as opposed to working in your business in that sense, but there's also high costs associated with this. If you're paying grant writers, grant consultants, you're paying them anywhere from 1,000 to 20,000, honestly even way more than this, only to face a high rejection rate. And for founders like you and me that are marginalized and have intersectional identities, this reality is even more intense, because only 2 out of 300 grants, for example, in 2020 went to Black-owned businesses, and only 4% of funding in Canada goes to women-led businesses. And this is in part a reality and a result really of the systemic inequalities, yes, but it is also a result of the broken system that doubles the impact of lack of access to funding for marginalized founders and entrepreneurs like us. And so today, what I want us to go through is, once we've identified this problem, we live this problem every day, and there's a way that right now you're applying for grants. And if you're on this call, I imagine that you're not getting the grants that you need, because the odd way of pursuing grant, which is often reactive, it's frustrating, right? It is frustrating. And we're now moving towards a new way, which is strategic, which is system driven, and puts you in perfect alignment with founders. And so that's what we're going to be going through today. Now, I know I talked about money. We're here because we want money. But for the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, let's forget about the money. Put the money aside. Let's shift our focus to what comes before the money. And that's one of the mistakes I see founders jumping to when starting to look for grants. It's going straight into, okay, I got to find the grant, I got to find the funds. But before you start searching for the funds, you have to focus on what is it that you want to get funded, right? So for the next few minutes, we're going to forget about the money, and we're going to focus on what it means and what it looks like to build a winning project. We're going to define exactly what, whether it's your business or your initiative or your project is, and build a compelling story and a compelling plan around it so that it becomes attractive and undeniably fundable to funders. That is the first step. We're going to start with what we call in the grant world a theory of change. And this is the narrative that connects your actions to the change that you want to create. And it answers a few simple questions, right? So before you start, the first question is, what do you want to get money for? What is the big audacious vision that you want to get funded? So let's say your big goal is you want to reduce food deserts in Scarborough. Why? Why is this a problem? Why should we care? Why should I as a funder care that this is a problem? How does it align with what I care about? This is what the why is trying to answer for the funder. If you can understand your why, express why this problem is a problem and why the funder should care about, it gives them an opportunity to say, okay, what's on our mandate and what does this align to? This is the problem that you're solving for, right? And so in this example, we've got the big goal. We want to reduce food deserts in Scarborough. We've got the why, because residents lack access to fresh, healthy food. That is why we want to tackle this goal. Okay, so how will you achieve it? And this is your unique strategy or intervention. You'll often hear, and this will sound in so many ways like entrepreneurship 101, right? Having a why, defining a problem, validating that problem, and then building a solution, and also how the solution will be implemented. So the how is, how will you achieve it? And this is your unique value proposition. And so in this example, we'll have by building a community-based urban farming network. Okay, as I'm sharing this, you're seeing that there's a story that's being built and that there are emotions that are being triggered, because at the end of the day, on the other side of the computer, the other side of your grant application is a funder, a human being who actually cares about something, and you're trying to find what it is that they care about. We'll talk about understanding the funder language to understand what a funder cares about, and then you're really expressing to them that this thing that I care about, you care about as well, and I want to change it, and here's how I'm going to do it. And once I do it through this solution and through this process, here is the results. The end results always comes back to the big multiplier, the ROI, the return on investment. Now, if you're looking at investment in sense of like venture capital, for example, the ROI is often very straightforward. It is profit. Or you're looking at sales, you give me money, I do X for you, I multiply it by however much percentage, and your return on investment is $10,000 profit, right? So that is very tangible and quantifiable. But when it comes to grants, it's not always the case, because grants is free money. So you're not really, unless it's a repayable grant, you're not really required to pay that money back. There is no free money. There's no free lunch. So you're exchanging something in return for that capital that's being given to you. So what is the ROI when it comes to grants, and what is the ROI and the outcome that you should be communicating as you're before looking for the money, building that theory of change and building that foundational project? It is impact. It is outcomes that are tangible, outcomes that are also quantifiable. Sometimes they can be qualitative, but they can be also quantitative, right? Increased food security and improved community health. That is something that if I am the city of Scarborough and I'm noticing that people in our community do not have access to fresh food, that is a problem. And we want to ensure that there's increased security and improved community health. And you come to me and say, hey, we found a way to increase food security and improve community health for folks in Scarborough. Immediately, there's that alignment. And now I'm open to listening. And depending on how you're going to deliver that outcome looks like, as well as other items which we'll talk about, including who's the team behind it, what's the concept, etc. As long as all those things align and our outcome aligns, there is an opportunity for me to fund your project, because now we can partner because we've got common ground. So that's the first step that I want us to start from. Before I continue, I want to see any questions so far. Feel free to drop them. I want to see some reactions. I'm also just reading through the chat from your responses earlier on how long it's taking you to write grants. I'm seeing 10 to 12 hours from Takia. That is a lot of time. Oh, I see Chakeva's response that they want to find grants, but sometimes they want so much, so little. I really get this. And I think when we talk a little bit later about the anatomy of a winning strategy, we'll talk a lot about this, because not all money is good money. And just because a grant is even aligned with what you stand for doesn't mean you should pursue it for this very reason. Like, as much as the funder is looking at the ROI, the return on investment, you too should be looking at what is the return on investment for, one, the time that you're putting in to apply for this grant. But grant writing and just fundraising in general does not end at the application. When you do get the funding, you have to deliver on it. And sometimes that delivery is years long, like you're doing the project for years. And if the money is solely for just so much, that's something that you have to consider. But that is why there's preliminary steps, even the theories of change and the next piece that I'll share about, increasingly important, because as long as you understand what your big goal is, the how, the outcomes, and the next piece, which is the logical framework, you also understand then the blueprint, right? Because the theory of change is the story of your impact. But the logical framework, which I'll share in a second, is the blueprint. As long as you understand that, you understand the activities and the labor, even the investment that you're going to put in, whether it's in form of labor or whatever else is, as long as you understand that, then now you start to align yourself with grants that are in alignment with that. So we've talked about here the theory of change being the story of your impact. Everything starts with a story, and there's just so much power in storytelling. And grant seeking is sales. It's a form of sales. You're selling something to someone in exchange for their money. Whereas if you're doing door-to-door sales, you're selling like a knife and they're giving you money. In this case, you're selling a vision, you're selling a project, you're selling a concept, and you want some money in exchange. And the basic rule of storytelling is the ability to tell a story in a way that aligns with and triggers, even incites emotions with the person that you're selling to, right? So this theory of change is the story, and that is the foundation that you want to start with. But beyond the story now is the blueprint. So the blueprint turns this chart of an inspiring vision into a credible step-by-step plan. Entrepreneurs, I love this for us. We're dreamers, we're creators, we're visionaries. And sometimes though, we get stuck in that vision. right? We get stuck in the big goal that we want to bring to life. We get stuck in, I want to change the world. We get stuck in, I want to be innovative. I want to disrupt the industry, whatever the case might be, right? But when you go to a funder with just that, I've got a big goal. Everyone has big goals. Dreams and ideas are so cheap these days because I can go to ChatGPT and have the most perfect idea on how to change the world or how to stop the climate crisis. But you have to be able to come down into the details and then offer the funder a step-by-step plan of how you will actually produce those outcomes for them in a way that maps your input, which is what you need, to your activities, to your outputs, and finally to your outcomes. And this is very important because you're now proving to funders that you're going to be a good steward of their capital. It shows to them that you're not just a dreamer, you're actually with a plan. And ideally, it's not just a plan, that you have a proof of concept because you've done that before or you've done something like that before. So when we talk of this logical framework, this is essentially a blueprint, like I mentioned, for your impact, a blueprint for your work. So what this framework has, now that you've got that theory of change and the story of this is the big goal, this is the why, this is the how, and this is the outcomes. Okay, let's get to the details. If our goal is to reduce food deserts in Scarborough, what are the resources, the inputs that are needed to actually do this work? Once you do this foundational work, you will find that even as you're applying for grants, it's taking you less time to do that because you already have a template, you already have a lot of these answers. And these are questions that a lot of grant applications, they might be different from funder to funder, but the universal funder equation and funder language will be the same. And so once you've done this foundational work before even starting to look for funds, you understand that to do this project, I need $10,000 because the $10,000 gets me a small piece of land where we can create an urban farm in the example of Scarborough and the food deserts. But you also understand that the $10,000 will get me a community manager, and this community manager will be able to mobilize the community to start farming or disseminate information, etc. So you want to understand what those inputs are. So much so that even if you're not actively pursuing funding, but you're chatting with someone who's a potential investor about your project, and they're like, oh, okay, so what do you need to bring this to life? I have the money and I might be able to help you. What do you need to bring this to life? If you started from just looking for grants and you didn't do this primary work, when those inbound opportunities come to you, you don't have an answer because you haven't done the primary work, right? So that's one of the pieces that you have to ensure you have in your blueprint. The other piece now is activities. Okay, you're going to get $10,000 and a community manager. What exactly are you going to do with this? What are the actual activities that will happen to bring these outputs and these outcomes to life? You want to be able to define that for yourself. So in the example of Scarborough with the 10K, what we need is we need to secure 2 farm plots. We need to host 5 workshops. We need to partner with ABCD community organizations so that we can further reach the community. You want to map all of these things out from the very beginning. One, like I mentioned, because it makes it easier for you when you're actually applying for funding. But 2, again, I always say like opportunity meets preparation is the best equation ever, right? When I'm networking and I'm talking about this big goal and big idea that I have, if I can speak to the specific activities that need to happen, it's like what exactly needs to happen here? And all of a sudden I have someone saying, I can do that for you because I'm able to communicate that vision before prematurely looking for funding without defining and really describing what the vision looks like. The other part of the logical framework here is outputs. You've got your inputs, you've got the activities that the inputs will fuel. What's the result and the outputs of these particular activities? I know Dolapo and I were applying for many grants this year together. And a lot of what we're doing is when you're writing it out, you see the map. Like it's so hard to describe right now because it's quite visual, but each and every piece of your grant application has to align. If I'm asking for $10,000, what activity in particular is that $10,000 going to sponsor? So for example, in my nonprofit, we ran our Black in Sales program as an example. And so part of the inputs that we need is, let's say, $10,000. What's that $10,000 going to sponsor? It's going to sponsor 5 mentors or 10 mentors. Each mentor is getting paid $1,000. That is specific. Talk of SMART goals, specific, right? $10,000 is going to sponsor specifically 10 mentors for this program. Okay, what activities will we do? So in my activities, I should have mentorship because I'm already asking for money for mentorship. So where they meet 5 times per year or however long, that specific activity. Okay, so what? Why are they meeting? What's the output of these meetings? So that when our participants meet with these mentors, they get better access to opportunities because mentors and sponsors open doors for them and they increase their employability because now they have a larger network. But they also have clarity on their career paths because they have a mentor that they're meeting with that's helping them refine and holding their hands through their career. That is an output. Okay, good. But outputs is different from outcomes. What is the outcome of, and this is like the big genre thing, what is the outcome of these people having clear guidance on their career paths? What is the outcome of Black folks having direct entry into the workforce or having a mentor that does introductions for them? This is now the big thing. That outcome is going to be that there'll be more representation, for example, in the workforce of Black folks, that the levels of unemployment amongst Black youths will be reduced because more Black folks are getting jobs as a result of the mentors opening doors for them. So it's always, there's a logic to it. It's not always linear, but there is a logic to it, so that for every budget item, for example, on your grant application, you can see a step-by-step of what this looks like. And as I'm speaking, questions come up, leave them in the chat. That way you don't forget them. So now we've got the story. That's the theory of change that we just talked about, right? We talked about the theory of change here. And now we've got the actual blueprint to back up our story of how we're going to do it, right? And we're doing this because we know that one of the most important things that funders are looking for is how are we going to steward their capital, right? So that they know that you're not just a dreamer, you're a doer and a builder with a plan. So now that you have these two, you're fundable, right? But before all of this too, now we have to understand, because as much as this is useful, it comes down to how can you connect that to a particular funder. This is a general framework. So how do you then understand, because you're going to be applying this framework to multiple grant applications, multiple funders. So we need to understand what I have coined as the universal funder equation. I just made this because it looks nice to just have equations, but there's an equation to it, right? Every grant application might seem different, but almost every funder everywhere is evaluating you on the same core principle. And this is what I've coined the universal funder equation. The equation starts with the compelling story, aka theory of change, and your credible plan, your logic model, your logic framework. And we've covered those, but there's a few things that are additional to the plan and the story. And this is your team and your return on impact. If there was 5 of you that had the same story, same strength of a story, same strength of a plan, what would make a funder fund person A, person B? If everything else equal, what would make a funder fund person A versus person B? It's when they start digging deep to say, okay, who's done this before? Who's got a proof of concept? Who's got a team that backs this up, right? Because like I mentioned, the story, even the plan, easy to bring up, easy to conjure up. It's easy to conjure the most perfect project and the plan on how you're going to implement the project. What it comes down to then is capacity. How are you able to implement this project? Do you have the capacity to implement this project, aka team, aka resources? The other thing it comes down to is experience. Do you have experience implementing this project? And I'll chat a little bit more about what experience looks like. It doesn't have to be that, right? So experience, proof of concept. We've done this before. At the end of the day, funders want to back winners. They want the best way to prove that you can do the work. They want to de-risk their investment. And the best way to de-risk their investment, because even a grant is an investment, is to ensure that this person is backable because they don't bark without a bite, right? They've done this work before and they can see results of their work, right? So that's one of the reasons why I always encourage entrepreneurs and folks like yourselves to start the work even before you get the funding. What is the most minimal viable version of this? I'll give an example. In my nonprofit, or Career Academy, we run this program called Elevate Her Leadership. I love it. And I think there's a couple of folks on this call that ran through the program. We didn't have money to do that project. I knew the project was very important because the problem that the project was solving for, the why, is something that I had experienced myself. Upon talking to many women, I saw that it was a valid problem. And I was looking for funding for it. And it was quite challenging to find the funding because A, like we hadn't done the project before. And B, it was just a tough time to find the funding, like it was competitive landscape. So what we ended up doing is we're going to do this project as lean as possible, but we're going to do the project. And so we started looking at resources like, okay, so let's do the whole logical framework. What's the input that's needed in this? We needed workshop facilitators who are going to facilitate workshops on different topics in the industry, and then output so that women would get this capacity building that prepares them for leadership roles, and outcomes so that we would see more women in leadership roles in Canadians' workforce. Because at the time, and right now even, there's only 1% of Black women in leadership roles. So I did all of that exercise. I identified what resources and inputs were needed. I always say to start with where you are and with what you have. Where am I right now? What do I have? What do I have, as in what resources do I have? What sessions can I run by myself because I have some experience in some of those topics? But also, who do I have in my network that might be open to doing this pro bono, right? So I started reaching out to people, and a lot of them were like, yeah, we'll do this. Great initiative. Absolutely understand. We want to be a part of this. They ran the program lean, and the funding found us halfway through the program. So we ended up finding funding for this program halfway through running it because we're able to say, we care so deeply about this project, so much so that we're able to start the work to validate that the problem and our solution is feasible. And the funders were like, we get it. They gave us the funding that helped us continue the program to the extent of finishing off the program with a getaway for the women and all of that good stuff, right? So that's what funders want to back, the proof of concept piece. Start with where you are and with what you have, and figure out the minimal viable product of your project. And you can even communicate to your funders to say, so far we have done ABCD with this project because we haven't had resources and we've had to be lean. But with your funding, we can 10x our impact. But the other thing that's a differentiator here is also your team, a strong team. Part of the other thing I want to add on the experience is do not limit your experience and your proof of concept to just being something that you've done in your organization. Some of the projects that I have run for my nonprofit in particular were new projects, but we got funding for them because I was able to say that my proof of concept is that I have done similar projects in my role working 9 to 5. So I'll give an example of working with Black Founders Network. We did a project, the Black Career Advancement Program. It was my 9 to 5 job. I was leading that project in that context. But when I started running my own nonprofit and I was applying for grants for the same or similar projects, I was to reference that the work that I'm doing in my 9 to 5 as I have experience running this, I've done this before, and this is the results of when I ran it. That is still proof of concept. The other multiplier here is the team, right? If everything else is equal, the one thing that's going to differentiate you from the next applicant is your capacity to deliver on this program. And to be clear, by team, I'm not just talking about who's your co-founders or who's on your core team, who's your program managers. It's your entire ecosystem that you've built around your venture. For so long, I was still able to speak to my capacity to deliver on this programming because I could reference community partnerships, I could reference volunteers, I could reference strategic partners and expert advisors as part of a whole ecosystem and a whole team that's going to increase my capacity to deliver on this project, right? So this is something that you should be adding and emphasizing so that the funders know that you have the right people in your corner to make this happen. An example is when I'm writing a project that's very marketing focused, and maybe I don't have a marketing person on my team, but I have a marketing person on my board of advisors that is capacity because I have access to them and they can help me deliver, right? So that's one. But the single most important multiplier of all of this, once you have your story, you have your plan, you have your proof of concept, and you have your team, the most important variable is the return on impact. This is your promise. If we give you this money, what is the measurable, meaningful change that we can report back to our stakeholders? What is the return on investment for us, because even funders have funders. Their funders could be taxpayers, their funders could be philanthropic donors, but they have funders that they have to report back to as well, right? So the most important thing that they're going to be looking for in your story, in your plan, in your proof of concept, in your team is that if we give you this money, will you deliver, and what will you deliver that is meaningful enough for us to report back to our stakeholders and ensure that they have a high return on impact and return on investment. And again, this does not have to be financial. This can be social, it can be economic, it can be environmental. Your ROI can be, if you give us this money, we will use this framework, we will do A, B, C, D, and what will return to you is reduced carbon emissions. They will care about that because it's something that's already in their mandate to reduce carbon emissions, and they've already promised their funders that they will reduce carbon emissions, right? So this now ensures we have a strong foundation that is multiplied by a high return on impact, and the result is a truly fundable venture, or at the very least attractive venture that makes funders like interact and makes them engaged and intrigued enough to consider it, right? So you're no longer just asking them for money, because now you're aligning your outcomes and your impact with their impact. So you're presenting them an undeniable investment opportunity, which results in a shared success, but you're also calling them to partnership. At the end of the day, you're a partner to the funder, because the funder has made a promise to deliver on A, B, C, D, which sometimes they do not have the capacity to deliver on because they don't have their feet on the ground. They don't have the ties to the community. They're not as grassroots as you are. And so they need you as much as you need them, and they want to fund you. You just have to give them a good enough reason to fund you in a way that ensures they feel de-risked. So I'll pause here for a little bit before I go through the last couple of items here and then open it up for Q&A.
Q&A section.
Perfect. Thank you, Fai. Okay, so now I think we've talked about what the anatomy of a winning application looks like. The old way, the stuff that you've been doing that obviously hasn't gotten you granted, pun intended, to date, and what the new way should be looking like. So the old way was reactive and opportunistic. The new way is strategic because you've done the foundational work. You've got these milestones that you've already put in place. The old way was just fitting yourself and squeezing yourself into every opportunity. And this happens a lot when you do not have structure in the foundation. But the new way is finding alignment. I know as much as the next person how sometimes when you're just getting started, every money looks like good money. I remember trying to fit myself into a box. I got funding to do a gun violence project. Like, I care about gun violence, but not enough, and not enough for it to be the core project that I was running in an organization that was completely separate from that. And that came from not having that structure of what the activities that we're doing, what's our input, right? And finding the right alignment. When you have that foundation, it really helps. Yeah, and then the old way is the manual and exhausting process. I'll chat a little bit more here when I start talking in a second about how do you then leverage in this world of GPTs and AI, how do we leverage this technology to actually systemize our process, right? Ensuring that you have a process that is AI integrated, that is no longer fragmented, but also is focused on building a partnership in a way that aligns with your overall strategy and leads to an outcome of high success rate. So that is what the new winning strategy is an AI-powered solution that helps you simplify the entire process from program refinement, program design, project design, understanding your project to ensure it aligns with your organization's mandates, and then starting to discover grants that are aligned with that particular project and your mandate, but also having the right insights around the funder. What do they care about? What are those outcomes that they've made promises to their funders about? Who have they funded in the past? To then proposal writing. How do you take your time of writing a grant application from 2 hours to 10 minutes? Because all of this is possible using our AI-powered grant writing assistant. Just a month ago, I was writing a grant for $10,000 that, in the grand scheme of things, is not a lot of money. With our AI writing assistant, and I will show you this in a second, I was able to do that in literally 10 minutes. Saved me so much time, as well as a grant writer marketplace, so you can get the expert support that you need. But also, as I mentioned, grant writing, grant seeking, fundraising does not end with getting the money. It's after you get the money, what comes after that? What goes from a funder giving you $10,000 to being impressed by your performance and your results to then say we're going to give you another $100 to 10x this impact. So all of that comes in your post-award tracking as well. And our platform has consolidated all of that in one place. And now I will do a quick demo of the product view of this, but for today's conversation I will just run through it quickly. But this is what our platform looks like. So you have your dashboard, which is your overview of all the activities that you have going on. So you can see the projects that are active, the projects that are in your roadmap, you can see applications that you've started, etc. But beyond this, you're able to discover. Before we go to discover, let's actually go to my projects, which, like I mentioned, is the first step towards getting funding. So with our AI, you're able to create projects using multiple methods. So if you've already done the work and you already have a template or whatever else about your project, you can use manual creation. So click here and you just copy and paste from someplace else, whether you've got a doc of this information, and you manually add your project details. You can use AI-powered project design. This is very important and very useful for folks that might not even have expertise in project design, like you don't know where to start from, but you have a rough idea of what you want this project to look like. And so our platform allows you to input notes of what you want your project to be, whether it's the problem, the approach, or who it benefits, a rough idea. And then we're going to polish it and distribute it into these fields for you and create a project at the end of that. And then the other piece is a bit reversed. And we're still experimenting with this one, which is the grant-based creation. You find a grant that you know might be a fit for because the grant aligns with your organization's mandate, but you don't quite have a project in mind for it. Using that grant information, using what the funder has communicated in that grant overview, and using what you have communicated in your organization's overview, our AI will match the two and create a project for you based on this. So once you've used any one of these three methods to create a project, this is what it's going to look like at the end of the day. You have your project details, the goals of how much you want to fundraise for, and you're able to see all these different pieces like the rationale, objectives, problem, the timeline that I'm doing this project on, so you can replicate it across multiple times in the year. All of that is now consolidated in one place. If you had additional documents, you can also have them here. You're able to see different grant opportunities that are matched to this particular project, as well as grants that are in process for this project. So now you're getting matches, not just based on your organization general, whereas your project becomes very specific, right? And so let's go to discovery now. So now that we've got our project, we've gone through our profile, which is usually the first step of identifying all the different organizations' details. You go to discovery now. So you can see all the grants that are available to you. Right now, we have over 1,500 grants. Our objective is that by the end of the year, we have over 10,000 grants available to you, specifically for folks that are in Canada or running businesses in Canada. You can use the traditional filters to filter by location and different features such as beneficiaries. If you're doing projects for First Nations, for example, you can break it down specifically by that. But this in itself is good, but it still does not get you the specificity and save you as much time as you need, because I would still have to, even with that filtering, go through 42 grants to understand which one match with what my project offers. So we've got two additional AI-powered key features here. One of them being our intelligent search, where you can essentially search as you would on Google using natural language to describe what you're looking for, and our AI will generate results for you. So for example, I will say grants for Black education, then you should see a response in a few seconds. There we go. I have this right here, and I'm also able to see how much of a match I am to that particular opportunity. These are just AI-powered recommendations as well. Based on your organization and the funders, our AI is able to pull up matches that we think are a best fit for you and the percentage of that match, so that you know where to allocate your resources. Maybe if it's a 30% match, maybe you shouldn't be focusing on that, because that's not a strong enough eligibility alignment for you to spend your time on. And if you wanted to compare these opportunities here, so that you have a side-by-side look of, okay, I've got 3 grant opportunities. Where do I focus my energy? So I'm able to see side-by-side, okay, this one is low intensity. This might be a quick win. Maybe this is going to take me a whole day and I can push it for some time later. So all of these small details. Beyond discovering grants, it's equally important to discover funders, because the government of Quebec, for example, I might have found one grant by the government of Quebec, but I go to them and I see they have over 27 grants that I might be even eligible for. So maybe I want to explore and see what these opportunities look like, right? That's another feature that we've added for some of our premium members, because like I mentioned, it's important to really decode and understand who the funder is, what their patterns are, who they funded in the past. So for our premium members, they're able to go in here and request additional funder insights, such as detailed patterns and success rates, applicant profiles, etc. Down the line in our pipeline, we're working on what we call peer prospecting, where if, for example, my organization is similar to BFN, I can simply go in and search BFN and see who's funded BFN in the past, and safely assume that if the government of Canada has funded BFN and BFN runs similar projects to me, they might fund me as well. That way I've discovered a new opportunity. So let's go back to our grants just to show you what that would look like. I'll open this particular grant. This one is due today. So if you haven't submitted, it's an easy $5,000 win. Actually, I've won it a couple of times and helped people win it a few times. But once you find a grant, you can then click on it to view additional information right here. You can save it for the future. So this grant is already saved. You can share with your friends, share on socials, etc. Importantly, you can visit the grant website. So when you click that button, visit grant website, it takes you directly to the funder portal where you'll be able to view and read and confirm that you are a match for that grant. And also that is where you'll be submitting your applications. You do not submit applications on our platform, you submit them on the funder platform. What you do instead is once you see this grant and you see you're a good fit, you would click apply with AI Assistant. And once you do that, it will take you to this particular page where you then see the applications that have been drafted. So in that particular application, I would see that, okay, this has been drafted. I can review. So this is a Black North grant and it's $15,000. So let's click on it. Our team does the research on the grants, but also extracts the actual applications from the funder's application form onto our platform, so that when you click apply with AI Assistant, you come to this particular grant and you can generate all answers, and all of this information is auto for you because you've done the preliminary work of defining your project, having your theory of change defined, your logic frameworks, all of that stuff. So this is auto for you, and this is the most important part that helps you go from I spend 2 hours on grants to I spend 10 hours on grants, because now I've got a draft, I've got 70% of the work done for me. I can just go in and edit and filter and ensure it aligns with where I want to go with the application. And in our portal, once you complete the preliminary part of answering the questions and such, this is what your application review would look like. So you can see the grant details, you can see the project details, but then you can see all the responses that you've provided. And so now I can simply copy this and paste it directly into the funder portal to save my time, or I can export it as a PDF, export it as a Word doc, and send it to whoever needs to review, whether it's stakeholders, partners, my CEO, whatever the case may be. I'm also then able to manage these grants because now I have a 360 view and 30,000 feet view of what my activities are. I've got 13 grants saved. I've got 3 grants that I'm in drafting. I need to go and complete these drafts so I can send them out for review and submit them. So I'm able to move this through a funnel, and I think of it as Asana, and I love Asana. Our teams use Asana project management tool, where you get reminders of this task is due, or you get reminders of there's a deadline that's coming up, right? If there's 5 of us on our team that are helping write this particular grant, how do I manage our communications and ensure everyone has a task assigned to them that they're accountable to, and visibility as well? So I can simply create a task, create a draft, and this is in progress and it's high priority or it's urgent, and you can add due dates and you can assign to specific team members and collaborate with them on the platform. You can simply make a request for a grant writer. If you've done all this work, the benefit is you've done 70% of the work, and now you can only ask for a grant writer to edit and review for you, as opposed to doing a full proposal, still saving you time because you've done the foundation. We've also compiled additional resources because we know growth is growth. As much as you're looking for grants, any support, even in kind, can help towards bringing your vision to life. We've made partnerships with different service providers that offer additional value add to you. So you can get, if you're building a tech company, for example, you get $30,000 in credits from this. And by just creating an account with us right now, these perks are open to all users, but we will hide them behind the paywall, unfortunately, because it's economically sound for paid users down the line. So take advantage of while it still exists. Log in, access some of these additional perks. You get 90% off HubSpot and all of these different pieces. And you can, like I mentioned, track your grants here. You can also add notes. So if you save this grant and you had it in mind for that particular project, you can add it as a note so that everything is in one place. And then the reporting feature we're still figuring out, is still in progress, but this will help you. Maybe we're integrating with your Slack and your Google Drive or your Stripe or whatever else, so that when it's time to report to funders, you're not spending so much time starting a report from scratch. You can simply click generate report, and that saves you so much time. And that is pretty much it. We have created a discount code, 30% off your first month using the BFN offer, BFN 30. But we also have free trials because we love BFN, and you guys get free trials to try this product out and make sure it works for you. And that is pretty much all I had for you today. I know I'm a bit over time, so I'll pause for questions.
That was great, Justina. I think there's questions in the chat.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to start with Takia because I see your hand is up, and we'll try to keep them brief because we're a bit over time. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, Justina. Thank you so much. This session was very informative. I was told about you and your organization by my mentor, Alex Schwartz from Humber College.
I love Alex.
Yeah, he's my mentor. I've been working with him for the past 2 years. And when he told me about your organization, I was like, I need to figure out how to connect with my nonprofit organization. I can always reach out to you by email afterwards, but it's a nonprofit organization that was created to address the overrepresentation of Black children in foster care. We do that through our culturally sensitive care packages. We also offer educational workshops to foster families. So I'm just wondering, are there like training, or is there any type of like courses that we can take?
We're not primarily focused on training, but education is a huge part of it. That's why we do workshops like this with Black Founders Network. So our goal is to do more and more like that. When you go to our platform under resources, we also have articles, and they're not courses per se, but it's just, let me actually share my screen to make this easier. It's just opportunities to increase your capacity. So you can see here like different articles, you'd see videos, short form and otherwise. But if you needed a particular workshop, that's something we'd be able to do for you. We also have this grant dictionary, because I talked a lot about decoding language that funders use and understanding it. So we've created a dictionary that shows you what this looks like in action, so that terminology is never a barrier to access resources. So I wonder, does this answer your question on the training and capacity building side?
Yes. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. What's the best way to connect with you?
Yes, I will just put this on the screen. I've got my email here. You can get in touch. That's my email, as well as just our general community email. So please reach out, especially if you have questions that are of personal nature. A couple of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat: is there a cost to use Granted? We've got a free trial, but beyond that, it comes at a cost. We currently have a subscription model, which goes from $99 per month to $249 per month Canadian, but that might change because we recognize that sometimes you're not writing grants every month, so it's unfair to have you pay every month for this subscription. So it will be a pay as you go. You just pay when you need specific services on the platform, and there's more to come on that. Classic Juice asks here, I've been told that grant applications are being screened for AI use. It's not clear if they're being disqualified. However, can you please share how dictatable AI assistant is within writing grant application process? Yeah, this is definitely AI written. And one of the ways we're trying to solve for that, but also really prevent for that, is twofold. One, we're training our own LLM models, right? So we want to shift from using the generic ChatGPTs and Geminis to having our own models that are actually really trained on using successful grant applications, etc., to generate those responses for you. But beyond that, there's a couple of things at play here. Our AI does not hallucinate. It's not just going to give you answers. In fact, it's been trained to, if it does not have enough context to respond to a question for you, it's going to say, I don't have context to respond to this question for you, but it would give you a template of how I would respond to the question. It would say, if the question is about who are your beneficiaries, but your project doesn't really list beneficiaries, the response should look like, our beneficiaries are X and they are within this demographic and they are located in this area. So that's one. And then two, we've made it very intentional, because as much as we're training our AI, and we're also still very early on, to be fair. So I will warn you and ask for grace that as you use our platform, there will be glitches, and we hope you can be co-creators and co-builders with us and come back to us with some of those issues and glitches, so that we can create a product that actually serves you, and we can do that together. But my big emphasis has been AI and HI. That's very central to the work that we do here at Granted, HI being human intelligence. And so you will see in one of our tiers, if you pay our $249 per month, you don't just get all of these AI tools and you're left to do the work by yourself. You actually get 3 hours of one-on-one service with our team, where there's actually a human being, a grant writer, that is reviewing applications for you. And in most cases, that grant writer is me, and I'm reviewing applications for you and saying, this is what makes for a great language. This is how you make this sound less AI-ish, and etc. So that is how we're currently detecting for AI and really solving for that AI transparency piece. But as we train our own models, we hope that we can really narrow down on that issue and make AI just a tool to support your work, but should not be a hindrance to get the funding that you need. What's the success rate for applicants using Granted versus the conventional process? I will answer this in 2 ways. So one, we went to market and we started onboarding folks and getting users on our platform just in end of July, so a couple of months now. So we have not heard back enough from people using the platform itself to give us feedback on how successful they are being. But what we're tracking right now is how much time we're saving them, because to some extent, quality over quantity, yes, but quantity matters as well. It is a volume game. You want to be able to apply to as many opportunities that you're eligible for in as little time, so that you scatter your seeds and hope one of them come to fruition. So we've been able to track how much time we're saving folks on our platform. In my example, that was from 3 hours to 10 minutes. That's over 2 hours saved. And if you X that by 10 grant applications, that's 20 hours saved in a week. And right now we have over 20 grant applications that have been submitted through our platform. And we're tracking the results of those, because that's not so much on us, it's on the funders getting back to folks. But the framework on which Granted is based is in part my own framework, having written grants and having secured over $2 million in funding. And that success rate lies from anywhere 20 to 30%, which I think is still quite decent. But we're still tracking these metrics and we will communicate them as time goes by. How the platform decodes the funder language, can you? Yes, so I think I talked about one of them being the grant dictionary, but the other one being like we're able to pull certain data from what the funder is like. From this particular grant, what does the funder look for in terms of target outcomes? What does the funder look for in terms of target beneficiaries? That's like decoding their language and then aligning it with what you should be focusing on in who your target beneficiaries is. Funders would say, for example, in their grant overview, that we will not fund projects that are an event. And part of us decoding that language is pulling that information for you and ensuring that when you're applying for your grant application is not an event, because it will be an immediate dismissal. Okay, do we have any questions? I see, Kevin, your hand is up as we wrap up. Please jump in.
Hi, it's a pleasure to listen to Granted and offer your offering. And I'm speaking from a perspective of what's the scale up going to be, because right now I'm seeing it's just for North America, and I'm looking at what if we scale it up to the African side, the Asian side, the Latin American side. There are those people who need grants.
Absolutely.
And there are very legitimate issues to raise. Personally, in Canada, I'm also working with farmers in Kenya, and they need funding. So is it going to be scalable?
It absolutely is scalable. That's something we're already in discussion with our stakeholders and just the team internally on what's the next step for us. Before we scale, we obviously want to make sure the foundational architecture is solid and sound so that we can replicate that across markets. But definitely we're huge on the scalability track, and actually Africa is high on our priority list because there's a lot of funding going to the global south in general. There's a lot of funding going there, but we want to make sure we can aggregate and make it easier for folks who need it the most to use this AI for social good as they run those projects. So it's definitely on our path. And in the meantime, we're actually already servicing or in conversations to service some African communities, because the only hindrance right now to scaling to African markets, for example, is because our discovery and grant database is not targeted to Africa, but everything else can be used. If you found an African grant, for example, you could still use our AI writing tools, because again, the logical framework, the theory of change, all of the models that I've shared are universal. So the challenge is that we have not started focusing on Africa in terms of creating a database for that specific geographic location, but it is high on our list. I'll take two more questions as I wrap up. Abigail, your question around multiple people using the same platform for grants, how does it make it unique for each applicant? Very important. Again, that comes down to the grant application being based not just on a hallucination. If you went to ChatGPT and asked for a response to generic, versus if you go to a platform that is trained on successful grant applications, like that's its whole purpose. It's also drawing from your own projects. The HI piece is what makes it unique. There's still human involvement in it because you also have created the project yourself and you're just using AI to enhance it. That's the unique piece. As we train our models forefront, because we don't want to produce low quality grant outputs just to save time. So it's forefront for us. I'll take one last question from Classic Juice and then we'll wrap up.
I had a question about whether there was space within the platform to keep track of deliverables, receipts. Sometimes you apply for tech grants and they want proof that you've purchased something. And then I also wondered if when we first sign on and we're putting in things manually, is the platform able to keep track of the sustainable development goals or the impact that our company focuses on?
I think there's a couple of places that might be a match for your questions. As you're adding your information, one of the things that we're actually tracking for here when we talk of mission and impact is your SDGs that your organization focuses on. So you can do the same even with your specific project. And that's why I was saying like your organization and the funding that will be matched to your organization will be different to some extent to the funding that will be matched with your specific grants, because your organization in this example is focused on decent health and economic growth and innovation, etc. But there might be one project which is only focused on no poverty. So as long as this is listed in your project and such, that SDG alignment is considered as we match you to funding opportunity. When it comes to tracking receipts and things of that sort, I think the uploaded documents might come in very valuable, and you can just upload general documents like your pitch deck and organizations overview, whatever other documents that you have, you can upload here and use it as a central storage hub. But you could also do the same for specific projects. So if I give an example of this project here, if I have specific receipts for these projects that I've used in the past, or I've done this project before and I have a report that I want to use to draw from as I write application for further funding to pursue this opportunity, this project, I can add all of them here. So when it comes to tracking deliverables and such, that is what our reporting structure will do. So what we hope will happen is we've helped you design and refine your project, find the grants for it, apply for it, manage it, and then you've gotten the funding. When you get funding, you usually have to sign a program agreement or some contract of some sort. And we want to be able to have that contract include what your deliverables are, when the deadlines for reports are, what metrics you'll be tracking. And so our reporting feature would be able to have you upload that, pull that data from it, and then create milestones and deliverables for you. So now you can say, okay, based on your contract, December 1st, you have to report on this, or December 1st, you have to jump on a call with the funder. We can help you track all of those things and those milestones. We create a structure to track your milestones. And then when it's time to report and aggregate those deliverables, you can do it with one click. All right. This has been amazing. It has been exhilarating for me to share about this structure, but also to share about what we're building at Granted. I hope it has been the same for you. I really appreciate how much of a engaging community you have been today. Please feel free to connect if you have any questions. And one of the things I forgot to mention, I want to mention now, is if you find a grant opportunity that you're a fit for and you're not eligible in some cases, I think specifically with for-profit ventures, you might find a grant that is focused on like career development and your organization does that, but it's registered as a for-profit. My suggestion before I forget is value in partnerships. Find a way that you can partner with a nonprofit that is doing the same thing and apply for that funding. Lapo and I are like best friends when it comes to that because I have a nonprofit, she has a for-profit, we do projects together, and that's how you collaborate and increase your impact. But that aside, this has been great. Thank you so much. I hope to see you on our platform. Can you put in the chat exactly what topic you want to see a future workshop on? That way we can keep it in mind and maybe it becomes our next workshop. I really appreciate you joining us today. Have a great evening.